I should have known the night was doomed the moment I slipped into the dress he'd insisted I buy. A shimmering navy gown, expensive enough to make me feel like a trophy. It was our 10th wedding anniversary, and David had gone all out. Private dining room at the Kansas City Club, candlelit tables. Our closest friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate our love. For a moment, I let myself believe it was real. The champagne sparkled, the silverware glinted, and I could almost pretend the last few months of distance between us were nothing more than stress at the office. He raised his glass with that politician's smile he'd perfected, and people clinked theirs back. But then the door opened, and in walked our neighbor, Amanda Fletcher. Her red dress clung to every curve, a little too daring for an anniversary dinner she wasn't invited to. I froze as she strutted in like she belonged there. David didn't flinch, didn't even glance at me. Instead, he smiled. A slow, smug curve of his lips that made my stomach twist. "Ah, there she is," he announced, loud enough for every guest to hear. "The woman who makes me feel alive again." The room went dead silent. Forks clinked against plates. My best friend's eyes widened. Even Amanda's husband, sweet, mild-mannered Greg, stared in shock from the back of the room. I waited for David to laugh, to play it off as some tasteless joke. But no, he rose from his chair, walked across the room, and pressed his lips to Amanda's right there in front of me. Long enough, deep enough, deliberate. The betrayal burned through me like acid. My ears roared with the sound of blood rushing, and I couldn't move at first. Then Amanda had the audacity to glance at me with a smirk, as though I were the outsider, as though my marriage, my life, was just collateral damage in their little affair. "David," I whispered, my voice shaking. "What are you doing?" He pulled away from her and turned to me, grinning as if he'd just won something. "Tiffany, don't act surprised. You've been more of a roommate than a wife these past years. Amanda, she gives me what you can't. Passion, excitement, a reason to wake up." The laughter from one or two nervous guests echoed like knives in my chest. I stood up, every eye glued to me. "You brought her to our anniversary dinner? She's not just her," David said with a cruel laugh. "She's the woman I should have married in the first place." The room gasped. Greg half rose from his chair, his fists clenched, but shock held him back. My hands trembled, but I forced myself forward, heels clicking against the hardwood floor until I was inches from David. "Say that again," I demanded, my voice low but steady. His eyes glittered with arrogance. "You heard me. Amanda is everything you're not." And before I could think, before the humiliation could crush me, my hand moved on its own. Crack. The slap echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. His head snapped sideways, and the smugness vanished. The guests gasped, some even applauded under their breath. Amanda's face flushed scarlet as she grabbed his arm, whispering, "David, let's just—" "Don't touch me," I spat at her, my voice shaking with rage. "You think you're special? You're nothing more than his sideshow. And you—" I turned back to David, my chest heaving. "You've just declared war in front of everyone who matters." For a moment, no one moved. His cheek glowed red, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't decide between anger or shame. I felt the sting in my palm, but the pain grounded me, reminded me I was still in control of something. I grabbed my clutch from the table, straightened my shoulders, and turned to the stunned guests. "Enjoy your dinner. It seems my husband wanted to put on a show tonight. Let him choke on it." Gasps followed me as I marched out of the room, heels striking like hammers. Behind me, I heard Greg finally explode, his voice breaking through the chaos. "Amanda, we'll talk at home. Don't bother coming with me tonight." David's voice cracked in protest. "Tiffany, wait!" But I didn't wait. I didn't look back. Out in the hallway, the cool air hit me, and for the first time in years, my vision was clear. My hands still shook, my chest still burned, but underneath the devastation, something darker stirred. This wasn't going to end with tears. He had humiliated me in public, gutted me in front of everyone who mattered. He thought I'd crumble, but he had no idea what he had unleashed. As I pushed open the heavy oak doors and stepped into the Kansas City night, I made a silent vow, my nails biting into my palm. David Collins and Amanda Fletcher had taken everything from me, and I would burn their perfect little world to the ground. The night after the anniversary disaster, I sat in the dark of my kitchen, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. My fingers traced the rim of a cold coffee mug, but I wasn't tasting anything. I was replaying everything that had led me here. Every sacrifice, every blind spot, every moment I'd dismissed as nothing. David and I met when I was 24. I was working at a marketing firm downtown, hungry, ambitious, believing I could build a career from the ground up. He was older by 6 years, polished in a way that made me feel both protected and admired. He had charm that lit up a room, the kind that made you believe he noticed only you. Against my better judgment, I fell fast. When we married, my parents gave me their inheritance money early, a sizable sum from my late grandfather, a man who had built his fortune with grit and discipline. For your future, my mother had said, handing me the check with trembling hands. Invest it wisely. I did. I poured it into David's dream, expanding his contracting business. He promised me it would double, triple, that we'd be set for life. And for a while, it seemed he was right. But we quickly became him. He drove the new cars. He attended the networking galas. I stayed home, caring for our daughter, Emma, who came along 2 years into the marriage. Don't get me wrong, I adore her more than anything. But I'd imagined balancing motherhood with my career. Instead, I became the backbone of the household, the invisible force making sure his shirts were pressed and his world ran smoothly. At first, I told myself that was love, sacrifice, compromise, holding the family together. But love doesn't make you invisible. Love doesn't hollow you out. The warning signs had been there, subtle at first. Late nights at the office, his phone buzzing at odd hours. Client emergencies, he'd say with a dismissive kiss. Amanda, our neighbor, started popping up more often. She'd bring over baked goods, laughing too loudly at his jokes on the driveway. I noticed how his eyes lingered on her longer than necessary, how his hand brushed hers when she passed him a dish at our block parties. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself no husband would risk his marriage, his daughter, his reputation for a fling. I even confronted him once, quietly, late at night. "Do you like her?" I asked. He laughed it off, pulled me into his chest and whispered, "You're being paranoid, Tiff. You know I only want you." I wanted to believe him. So I did. Even when Emma once mentioned casually, "Daddy spends a lot of time at Miss Amanda's house," I brushed it aside. Kids exaggerate, I thought. Maybe he was helping Greg fix their leaky roof. Maybe it was innocent. But the gnawing unease never left me. I drowned it with chores, school drop-offs, charity work, and smiling at neighbors who probably already knew the truth. The anniversary dinner should have been the climax of my suspicion. But in hindsight, it was simply the explosion after months, years, of quiet erosion. I kept hearing my mother's voice in my head, the one who had warned me the day I told her I was leaving my job to support David. "Don't lose yourself, Tiffany. A man's dreams are never worth more than your own." But I had lost myself. I'd given him everything, my money, my time, my trust, my future. And he had gambled it all away on Amanda Fletcher. The days after the dinner blurred together. Emma stayed with me, thankfully too young to understand the full scope of what had happened, though sharp enough to sense the tension. One afternoon, as I folded her laundry, she padded into the room with her favorite stuffed bear tucked under her arm. "Mommy," she asked, her voice soft, "why was Daddy holding Miss Amanda's hand in the backyard last week? I thought only mommies and daddies did that." My hands froze mid-fold. "What did you say, sweetheart?" She repeated it, matter of fact, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I saw them. They were laughing, and then he kissed her. On the mouth. She wrinkled her nose in disgust. "Gross. Daddy said it was a secret game, but I don't think it was a game." The air left my lungs like I'd been punched. I sank down onto the bed, my daughter climbing up beside me. She rested her head on my shoulder, blissfully unaware of the weight of her words. That was it. The confirmation I couldn't deny, couldn't explain away, couldn't hide behind excuses anymore. Not from myself, not from my child. The betrayal was real, and it had touched not just me, but Emma too. In that moment, my grief hardened into something else, something sharper. David thought he'd broken me, but he had just given me a reason to fight. I woke the next morning with swollen eyes and a raw throat, but something in me had changed overnight. The grief that had strangled me for days was gone, replaced by a cold clarity I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just David's wife anymore. I wasn't his accessory, his silent partner, his shield. I was a woman scorned, and I was about to make him pay. The first move was money. While Emma colored at the kitchen table, I slipped into the office and powered up the desktop David never bothered with, too busy flaunting his new laptop for business deals. I knew all his passwords. Years of managing bills and statements had taught me where the bones were buried. Within an hour, I had frozen the joint accounts, rerouted funds into my name, and shut down the credit cards he used like playthings. By the time he reached for his wallet that evening, the world would already look different. The second move was legal. I called Marissa Bennett, the best divorce attorney in Kansas City, a woman I'd met at a charity event years ago. I remembered her steel handshake, the way she joked about gutting men who think their wives are stupid. I never imagined I'd need her, but when I told her my situation, she didn't waste a second. "You've got leverage," she said flatly. "The inheritance, the child, the affair. We can make him bleed. Start documenting everything." The third move was my home. I'd loved this house once, the wraparound porch, the oak floors, the kitchen where I baked Emma's first birthday cake. Now it felt poisoned, tainted by secrets whispered in corners I hadn't seen. While Emma napped, I started boxing essentials. Clothes, keepsakes, the photo albums he probably thought I'd cling to. I didn't pack them because I wanted to preserve the marriage. I packed them because I wanted to control what I carried into my new life. The rest could rot with him. By nightfall, I had a plan. Freeze him out financially, secure my daughter legally, and sever myself emotionally. When David finally stumbled through the door, reeking of bourbon and false confidence, I was ready. He smirked when he saw the half-packed boxes. "What's this, Tiffany? A tantrum? You'll cool off once you realize I'm not leaving Amanda." I didn't flinch. I held up the envelope from Marissa's office, the one I'd had couriered just hours earlier. "This isn't a tantrum. This is the beginning of your end." His smirk faltered. "What the hell is this?" "Divorce papers," I said, my voice steady. "And before you start shouting, just know this. The accounts are frozen. The credit cards won't work. The house will be listed within the month. You've lost your cushioned life, David." For the first time, I saw it. The crack in his armor. His eyes widened, and his jaw tightened. He wasn't used to me talking back, let alone pulling the rug from under him. "You can't do this," he hissed, stepping closer. But I didn't back down. I'd spent too many years shrinking so he could loom larger. Not anymore. "I already did," I replied, meeting his glare. "Every move you make from here on out, I'll be 3 steps ahead. You humiliated me in public, David. You involved our daughter. You thought I'd crumble? No, I'm going to dismantle you piece by piece until you have nothing left." His face darkened, his bravado slipping into desperation. "Tiffany, wait. Let's talk about this. You don't know what you're doing." But I did. I turned my back on him, carried Emma's packed bag to the front door, and spoke over my shoulder. "I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking my life back." As I walked out into the night with Emma's small hand in mine, I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt powerful, strategic, alive. And judging by the stunned silence behind me, David had just realized, for the first time, that I was no longer his to control. The first cracks showed faster than I imagined. 2 days after I froze the accounts, my phone buzzed with a notification. David had attempted 3 separate ATM withdrawals. All declined. An hour later, my attorney called. "He's panicking," Marissa said with a hint of satisfaction. "He's already contacted his bank demanding to know why his cards don't work. Don't worry, everything's airtight. He can't touch a cent without your signature now." I pictured him, red-faced at the counter, barking at a teller who only shrugged. The image didn't heal the wound in my chest, but it was the first moment in weeks I felt a taste of justice. Amanda, meanwhile, wasn't faring any better. Word spread fast in Kansas City, faster than either of them anticipated. Neighbors whispered, coworkers gossiped, and Greg Fletcher wasted no time drawing his own lines in the sand. I didn't see it myself, but a mutual friend told me Amanda had been locked out of her own house. Greg had tossed her clothes onto the lawn in front of half the cul-de-sac. Apparently, when Amanda tried to run to David, she discovered his cards weren't working either. No fancy hotel suite, no quiet escape. Just 2 cheaters exposed, stripped of their comforts, cornered by the very community they thought they could outsmart. The ripple effects didn't stop there. My phone rang constantly with calls from people I hadn't heard from in years. Old friends, women I knew from the PTA, even David's sister in St. Louis. "Tiffany, I saw the photos," one woman whispered, as though afraid the walls themselves might repeat her words. "At your anniversary? In front of everyone?" "Yes," I said simply. My voice no longer cracked when I told the truth. "Good for you walking out," she said. "He's always been too arrogant. It's about time someone humbled him." Even David's parents, who'd never been warm to me, sent a stiff message through his brother. "We stand by Tiffany. What David did is unforgivable." That one, I admit, made me smile. The social invitations that used to flood David's calendar dried up overnight. His phone buzzed less and less, and when it did, it was usually someone cutting ties. Business associates didn't want the stain of scandal. Family friends didn't want their names attached to betrayal. His carefully curated image, successful contractor, devoted husband, charming neighbor, was unraveling at the seams. Meanwhile, Emma and I stayed at my mother's small house across town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was safe. Every night as I tucked her into the quilt my grandmother had sewn, I felt stronger. The fear had been replaced with resolve, and that resolve made me sharper than I had ever been in my marriage. By the end of the week, David's bravado had melted into silence. No grand speeches, no public posturing, just silence. Until Friday night. I had just finished washing the dishes when the doorbell rang. My mother was asleep upstairs with Emma, so I dried my hands and peeked through the curtain. David stood on the porch, his shirt wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his eyes wild. I opened the door but didn't step aside. The screen door separated us, and I kept it that way. "Tiffany, please," he said, his voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" "There's nothing left to say," I replied coldly. He pressed his palms against the screen. "I made a mistake. I know I did. But you can't just cut me off from everything. I don't have access to my money. I don't have anywhere to go." The words were almost laughable. This man, who once towered over me with arrogance, now begging like a stray dog. "You humiliated me in front of everyone we know," I said, my voice low but steady. "You paraded your mistress into my anniversary dinner. You involved our daughter in your lies, and now you want sympathy?" His eyes glistened, but I didn't flinch. For once, I was the one with the upper hand. I just need you to stop this," he stammered. I leaned closer, my voice sharp as a blade. "No, David, this is only the beginning." Then I shut the door in his face. The thud echoed through the house, a final punctuation to his desperate plea. As I locked the door and turned off the light, I realized something. The war had officially begun, and I was winning the opening battles. 2 weeks after I left, David finally tried to play the part of the victim. He couldn't reach me directly anymore. Marissa had blocked his attempts at contact and handled everything through legal channels. So he turned to the one place he thought he still had influence: his family. His parents invited Emma and me to Sunday dinner at their country club, a tradition we'd observed for years. At first, I wanted to decline. But when his sister called and whispered, "Please come. Trust me, you'll want to be there," I agreed. Something in her tone told me this wasn't just a family dinner. It was a stage. The dining hall was full that night. Couples in pressed suits and pearl necklaces, neighbors whispering behind linen napkins, waiters darting between tables. And there, at the center of it all, sat David. Amanda wasn't by his side this time. He looked smaller without her, like a magician stripped of his assistant. He forced a smile when I entered with Emma, but I caught the flicker of panic in his eyes. "Ah, Tiffany," he said loudly, drawing attention. "You actually came. Everyone's been waiting to hear your side of things." The way he said it made my stomach twist. This wasn't a reconciliation dinner. This was an ambush. He wanted to control the narrative, to make me look like the bitter wife who couldn't handle his mistake. His mother stood to hug me, her embrace longer and tighter than usual. "We're glad you're here, dear," she murmured in my ear. "Say what you need to say." I sat, my pulse steady. I'd come prepared. David wasted no time. "Look, Tiffany," he began, raising his voice so the surrounding tables could hear. "I've admitted I messed up. But parading this drama through lawyers and freezing my accounts? That's not fair. We're family. We can handle this privately, with dignity." Murmurs rippled through the room. He was trying to paint himself as the reasonable one, the victim of a vindictive wife. He leaned back, smug again, as though he'd regained control. And that was when I pulled out my phone. I tapped a video, set it on the table, and let the screen light up for everyone to see. The recording played, clear as day. Amanda's voice, giggling. David's voice, drunk and arrogant. "She's so clueless. Tiffany actually believes I'm at the office. You're the best thing in my life, Amanda. My wife's just the safety net." Gasps filled the air. A fork clattered onto a plate. His father's jaw tightened, his sister's eyes narrowed, and his mother covered her mouth. David lunged for the phone, but I snatched it back before he touched it. "Don't," I warned, my voice sharp enough to slice the air. I rose to my feet, my chair scraping back. The room hushed. Every eye was on me. "For 10 years I sacrificed for this man," I said, my voice trembling but loud. "I gave him my inheritance. I raised our daughter while he played businessman. And this," I held up the phone, still glowing with his betrayal, "is what I got in return. Lies, public humiliation, an affair with our neighbor." A stunned silence settled over the room. Then someone whispered, "With Amanda Fletcher?" The name spread like wildfire, whispers swelling into gasps. I leaned closer to David, my voice dropping to a venomous whisper that carried just enough for the front tables to hear. "You thought you'd embarrass me again tonight. But here's the truth, David." I straightened, my voice ringing like a bell. "I am not the woman you humiliate. I am the woman who ends you." The words landed like a hammer. Gasps turned into murmurs, murmurs into nods, and within seconds the entire dining hall was buzzing. People weren't just hearing me, they were agreeing with me. David's face went crimson. He looked around for support, but all he saw were judgmental stares. His mother stood abruptly, her voice trembling with fury. "Enough, David. You've shamed this family. Do you have any idea what you've done to Emma? To Tiffany?" His father's voice cut sharper. "You're no son of mine if this is how you behave." Even his sister piled on, arms crossed, eyes blazing. "You disgust me." The room erupted into whispers, waiters pretending not to listen while leaning closer, guests shaking their heads. David had wanted to control the narrative, but it had slipped away faster than he could grasp. And then, the final blow. The doors to the dining hall swung open, and Amanda walked in. Her hair was disheveled, her face blotchy from crying. She locked eyes with David, but he froze, caught in the mess of his own making. "I can't do this anymore," she announced, her voice cracking but loud enough for the whole room. "Greg served me papers this morning. I've lost my home, my reputation, and it's all because of you. We're done, David. The gasp this time was deafening. Amanda stormed out, heels clicking like gunfire, leaving him standing there, abandoned in every sense of the word. I didn't need to add anything else. But I did. I leaned in one last time, my voice sharp, precise, unforgettable. You wanted to be the man who left me for her. Congratulations. Now you're the man left by everyone. The line landed like a bullet. A ripple of stunned silence swept the room before someone actually clapped. Then another. And another. By the time I walked out with Emma's small hand in mine, the sound of applause chased me down the hall. David didn't follow. He just sat there, shattered, with the weight of humiliation crushing what was left of his ego. And for the first time, I felt the power shift completely. The city no longer whispered behind my back. They whispered behind his. If the country club dinner was David's second fall, then what came after was the landslide. He tried to claw his way back into control, of course. Men like David always do. They can't stand the silence of disgrace, so they fill it with noise. Loud, desperate, self-serving noise. 2 days later, a friend texted me a link. You need to see this, it said. It was David, sitting across from a local morning show host in a crisp blue suit, trying to look composed. The chyron at the bottom read, David Collins speaks out, betrayed husband or villain. I nearly laughed at the absurdity of it. Betrayed husband. He was attempting to flip the script, to paint himself as the victim. My wife blindsided me, he said smoothly, though the puffiness under his eyes betrayed sleepless nights. Yes, I made mistakes, but Tiffany froze my accounts, took my daughter, and humiliated me in public. All I ever wanted was to feel loved again. The host nodded sympathetically, feeding into his performance. Do you feel she overreacted? He leaned forward, as if confiding in every viewer. I think she's vindictive. I think she's trying to ruin me. And it breaks my heart because at the end of the day, I still love her. I nearly threw my phone across the room. Love me? After dragging Amanda into our anniversary dinner, after mocking me behind my back, after letting Emma see him sneaking around like a teenager? Love was the last thing in his arsenal. This wasn't about love. It was about power. But what David didn't realize was that power isn't just held in money or charm anymore. Power lives online. And online, the tide had already turned. By the afternoon, clips of his interview were circulating on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. At first, people seemed split, some pitying him, others skeptical. But then the receipts started dropping. Screenshots, audio clips, photos. Amanda had been sloppy, and so had he. Messages leaked where he bragged about keeping Tiffany around for appearances while living free with Amanda. One photo showed him shirtless in Amanda's kitchen, wearing the same watch I had bought him for our 5th anniversary. An audio clip surfaced of him laughing with a friend. If Tiffany finds out, who cares? She'll never leave. She needs me. The internet devoured it. By evening, hashtags were trending. Team Tiffany. David the Deceiver. Kansas City Cheater. The comments were ruthless. Imagine humiliating your wife at her own anniversary dinner and then crying on TV. Disgusting. Tiffany deserves everything. Queen energy. This man said he loves her after calling her a safety net? Nah. Bye. Even local bloggers picked it up, writing op-eds about how women sacrifice everything only to be discarded. My name was everywhere. Not in pity, but in power. The final nail came when someone leaked a video from the country club dinner. Apparently, a guest had filmed the confrontation. The clip showed me standing tall, holding my phone, delivering the line that had now gone viral. I am not the woman you humiliate. I am the woman who ends you. That 30-second clip exploded. It was shared thousands of times, stitched into TikToks with captions like, "When she finally wakes up and chooses revenge," and "Energy we all need." Women across the country posted videos lip-syncing to my words, turning my humiliation into a rallying cry. David's interview was reduced to background noise. Nobody cared about his crocodile tears anymore. He wasn't the betrayed husband. He was the punchline of a cultural moment. Even his business partners began pulling out. Clients canceled contracts. His company's Facebook page was flooded with one-star reviews. Photos of Amanda's clothes on the Fletcher lawn resurfaced, fueling the fire. The internet wasn't just watching. They were dismantling him piece by piece. By the end of the week, he issued a shaky statement on his personal page. "I want to apologize to my wife and daughter for the pain I've caused. I ask for privacy as we heal." But privacy was a luxury he no longer had. The damage was done. Emma was too young to understand hashtags and viral clips, thank God. But even she noticed the shift. When I dropped her off at school, other mothers approached me with quiet support. "We saw everything, Tiffany. You're stronger than most of us could ever be." My mother, once cautious and traditional, took my hand one night and whispered, "I've never been prouder of you. You're showing Emma what it means to stand tall." Meanwhile, David spiraled. He stopped showing his face in public, stopped answering calls. Amanda vanished completely, swallowed by her own disgrace. The man who had once strutted around Kansas City as though he owned it was now a ghost. And me? For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the quiet wife behind the man. I was the woman who exposed him, the woman whose words had become a rallying cry. As I lay in bed one night, Emma asleep beside me, I scrolled past yet another clip of myself. My own voice echoed back at me, fierce and steady. "I am not the woman you humiliate. I am the woman who ends you." And I realized something. David hadn't just lost control of me. He had lost control of the story. And in this new world, stories were everything. By the time the divorce proceedings began, David was already limping. The viral storm had shredded his reputation, but what came next would strip him of everything tangible: his money, his home, his family name. Marissa, my attorney, was merciless. "We don't play nice with men who play dirty," she reminded me as we sat in the polished conference room. She slid documents across the table. Proof of my inheritance funds used to build his business, text records confirming the affair, witness statements about his behavior. "This is leverage. We're not negotiating. We're taking." And we did. The judge reviewed the evidence with a grim expression. Infidelity, financial misuse, public humiliation. The verdict was swift. I was granted full custody of Emma, sole ownership of the marital home, and a sizable portion of the business assets. The inheritance I'd invested was deemed mine outright, meaning the company's foundation, the money that had built it, was legally tied back to me. David sputtered in court, red-faced, claiming I was robbing him blind. The judge silenced him with a gavel strike. "You robbed your wife of dignity, Mr. Collins. Consider this balance restored." The humiliation didn't end in the courtroom. His father, who once bragged about his son's success at every cocktail party, turned his back completely. After the country club disaster and the leaked receipts, he'd had enough. "You've disgraced us," I overheard him say in the hallway, his voice sharp with finality. "The Collins name means nothing with you attached to it." His younger brother, always the quieter one, stopped returning his calls altogether. When pressed, he simply told me, "I can't support him. Not after what he did to you, and to Emma." Amanda had collapsed in her own right. Greg finalized his divorce within weeks, citing her affair as grounds. She lost her house, her standing, and what little credibility she had left. Friends who once flocked to her wine nights now avoided her like poison. The last I heard, she was couch surfing with a cousin, her red dresses pawned for pennies. David, stripped of both his mistress and his allies, faced the full brunt of consequences. With his accounts frozen and business partners fleeing, he defaulted on loans. His car was repossessed, his office lease terminated. The man who once strutted around in tailored suits was now reduced to begging for handouts from acquaintances who no longer answered his calls. When the court officially awarded me the house, I returned with movers to box the rest of his belongings. He wasn't there. He couldn't afford to be. Instead, I found a letter scrawled in his handwriting, left on the counter like a desperate plea. Please, Tiffany, don't take everything. I have nowhere to go. But I did take everything. Everything he had built on my back, on my sacrifice, on my trust. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was justice. Weeks later, I heard he was staying at a rundown motel on the edge of town, trading sob stories for discounted rates. The man who once dined at the Kansas City Club now ate fast food out of paper bags, alone. And for the first time in years, I slept soundly. Because David Collins was no longer the man who towered over me. He was a man reduced to rubble, and I was the one who had taken the hammer to his empire. I didn't plan to see David again. By the time the divorce was finalized, his name was nothing more than ink on court documents and gossip whispered at backyard barbecues. He had become a ghost in Kansas City, someone people referenced only as a cautionary tale. But one gray afternoon in late October, I got the call. Marissa's voice was clipped. He's been evicted from the motel. He asked to meet you. One time. At the old house. Do you want it? Every part of me wanted to say no. But a darker part, the part still smoldering from that anniversary dinner, whispered yes. This wasn't about closure for him. It was about closure for me. So I went. The house stood hollow now, stripped of furniture and memories. Dust clung to the windowsills, and the faint smell of stale bourbon lingered in the air. When I pushed the door open, I found him sitting on the bare floor of the living room, hunched over like a man twice his age. His once-tailored shirt was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his shoes scuffed. "Tiffany," he croaked, standing too quickly, as if the sight of me jolted life back into him. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembling. "Thank you for coming." I stayed near the doorway, arms folded. "Make it quick." He shuffled forward, desperation pouring out of him. "I've lost everything. The business, the house, Amanda. She's gone. My family won't even return my calls. I'm nothing without you." I almost laughed at the irony. This was the man who once declared, in front of a room full of people, that Amanda was everything I wasn't. Now he stood broken, whispering that I was all he had left. "You're not nothing because of me," I said coldly. "You're nothing because of you." His eyes filled, tears spilling down his cheeks. "I made a mistake, Tiffany. A terrible mistake. I don't expect you to forgive me, but please, don't leave me like this. You don't know what it's like to have everyone turn their back on you." "Oh, I know," I shot back. "Because you turned yours on me first, on our vows, on Emma. You thought you could humiliate me, replace me, and I'd stay quiet. That's the only mistake you'll ever regret more than the affair. Thinking I'd remain small while you destroyed everything we built." He dropped to his knees, hands pressed together as though prayer might save him. "Please, please, Tiffany. Just help me. I'll change. I'll be the man you always wanted me to be." The sight of him kneeling should have softened me once, but now it only solidified the steel in my spine. I stepped closer, close enough for him to see the certainty in my eyes. "No, David, you'll never be that man, because you never wanted to be, and I won't carry your burden any longer." His lips trembled. "Then what am I supposed to do?" I leaned down, my voice calm, almost gentle, but sharp enough to cut through what was left of him. "Live with the truth. You're the architect of your own destruction." The words hung in the empty room like a final verdict. He froze, his tears stopping mid-fall, his body slumping as though the weight of it all had finally crushed him. I straightened, turned on my heel, and walked toward the door. The echoes of my footsteps filled the silence, each one closing the distance between the life I had endured and the life I had reclaimed. When I reached the threshold, I glanced back one last time. He was still on the floor, a crumpled shadow of the man he once pretended to be. And then I left, without hesitation, without regret, without a single tear. For the first time, the chains were gone. David Collins had built his empire on my sacrifice and torn it down with his arrogance. Now he was nothing more than the ruins he created. And I was free. A year later, my life barely resembled the ashes David left me in. Emma and I had moved into a bright townhouse closer to her school, the kind of place that didn't carry shadows in the corners. She decorated her room with fairy lights and posters, and every morning I woke to the sound of her humming while she brushed her hair. The heaviness that once lingered in her eyes was gone, replaced with the spark of a child who felt safe again. As for me, I returned to the career I had abandoned years ago. Marketing had always been my passion, and with Marissa's encouragement, I used the settlement money to launch my own boutique firm. What started as a single desk in my living room grew into a thriving business with a small team of women who knew what it meant to start over. We specialized in branding for local businesses, and before long, my work was being featured in Kansas City publications. At first, I worried about whispers, about living under the weight of scandal. But those whispers had faded. If people spoke my name now, it wasn't in pity. It was in admiration. I had gone from the humiliated wife to the woman who rebuilt her life from the ground up. Strangers messaged me online, thanking me for standing tall, telling me my story gave them courage to walk away from their own toxic marriages. And David? The last I heard, he was living in a friend's basement on the outskirts of town, picking up odd construction jobs when someone was desperate enough to hire him. The once proud businessman was now a cautionary tale, a name muttered with disdain at neighborhood gatherings. Amanda had long since vanished from his orbit, and his family still refused to acknowledge him. He was alone, irrelevant, forgotten. There was a time when I would have pitied him, but not anymore. Pity was for the woman I used to be, the one who gave everything and received betrayal in return. Now I only felt gratitude, not for him, but for what his destruction revealed in me. Emma thrived. I thrived. Our home was filled with laughter, with Saturday pancakes and late-night movie marathons. My mother often visited, her eyes shining with pride as she watched me juggle motherhood and business with the kind of confidence I never thought I could own. Sometimes, when the nights were quiet and Emma was fast asleep, I'd sit on the balcony with a glass of wine and let my mind drift back, to the anniversary dinner, to the slap, to the vow I'd made when I walked into the Kansas City night, broken but unbowed. I had kept that vow. Betrayal didn't destroy me. It freed me. And as the city lights flickered around me, I whispered the truth I had carved into my bones. He may have been the storm, but I was the rebuilding. And I would never be broken again. Thank you so much for watching my story. If it resonated with you, or if you've ever faced something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts or experiences down in the comments. I read every single one, and your words mean more than you know. Sharing helps us realize we're never alone in what we go through. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and keeps more stories like this coming your way. Until next time, stay strong.